In today's video, I am bringing you my top 50 running back rankings for week 4 of the fantasy football season. We just saw David Montgomery go off on Thursday night. Let's hopefully make the right decision for the weekend for you guys so you can get that W. Okay, without further ado, let's go ahead and start. 8 or 9 tiers we're looking at here today. We don't need to talk about Christian McCaffrey. If you have Christian McCaffrey, you start Christian McCaffrey. He's a superstar. You don't need to hear me say that. Let's also talk about the God mode running backs. Another group of running backs we really don't need to talk too much about. If Austin Ekeler plays, you play Austin Ekeler. He goes up against the Raiders, who currently give up the 7th most points to fantasy running backs. Doesn't matter who Ekeler starts, though. You play Austin Ekeler. You also play Tony Pollard regardless of matchup. However, this week, New England comes to Dallas. They face the Patriots. We've seen in the past, for example, the Dolphins with Raheem Mostert, they were able to run on this defense. So at the moment, it doesn't look like the same defensive front that we had in the past for this team. And then we have Bijan Robinson. All 3 of these running backs are in the God mode category because they're kind of able to surpass the matchups, right? Bijan has the London game. He faces the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are actually a really good defense. They give up 27th most points allowed to the running back. So they're a bottom 5 matchup for a running back. But again, the way that Bijan's being used in the air and on the ground, his snaps have gone up every single week and his usage is going up while Tyler Algiers is coming down. Bijan Robinson is a must start. Okay, so we've talked about the CMC and the God mode tier. Let's talk about locks. Now, in this locks tier, these are running backs that, okay, we don't need to talk about them too much. They're locks. We know their upside. We know what they're capable of. And I really love their matchups this week. So the first one we'll talk about is Saquon Barkley. Now, I don't know if Saquon's going to play or not. He's been practicing. So that's why I am putting him into the rankings in case he does play. Saquon is my RB5 on the week. If he does play, he goes up against the Seattle Seahawks, who currently give up the 10th most points to fantasy running backs. They have been susceptible to giving up touchdowns on the ground to the running backs. And the last time Saquon played over 27 PPR points, he was clearly nearing the God mode category if you drafted him. Someone who went absolutely nuclear last week, Saquon Barkley, but then Ken Walker. We will start Ken Walker this week. These are guys who are hopefully facing off each other if Saquon plays, both on Monday night. Kenneth Walker, they go to the Giants. The Seahawks do. Giants are a great matchup for running backs right now. Currently give up the 6th most points to the position. And we've seen Ken Walker be used in a very exciting way for fantasy football. Getting a bunch of touches, over 15 touches a game, getting the goal line work. Now that could change over the season, but in this matchup, against this defense, you don't overthink it. You start Ken Walker. And the last lock for me this week is Travis Etienne. Now, the matchup is actually not that great for Travis Etienne. He goes up against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Atlanta Falcons currently give up around the 5th least amount of points, to fantasy running backs. So they've been a stout defense. However, I just can't imagine who out there has Travis Etienne and is not putting him in their lineups. This offensive line hasn't played very well, but Etienne has kind of played, I guess, above his expectation according to yards over expected per attempt metrics. But Etienne is the guy. He's getting opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. He's dominating snap percentage. This is not a concern that Tank Bigsby is in that backfield. Okay, next we will move on to prime starts. These are guys that I am excited to have in my lineup. I feel very good if they're there. The first one is Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is at the Colts. The Colts have been pretty decent against running backs. They're 21st in points allowed to the position. Kyren Williams, I know he let you down last week, but I don't really think it was his fault. Honestly, he saw 7 targets. They just weren't accurate targets. So we know that Matthew Stafford is looking for him. These are PPR rankings. You don't overthink Kyren Williams. Think about it. Most of you guys would be happy with 7 targets for your wide receiver 2 on your team, and he got that being a running back along with what he'll get on the ground. He's a lock for 15 touches. You are excited about Kyren Williams. I am excited about Kyren Williams. We're also going to be starting Raheem Mostert. How do you not start Raheem Mostert at this point? It's kind of a, hey, until you show me you're not the guy, you're the guy in my lineup, right? This is a prime start at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are a pretty good run defense currently, at least for fantasy, as far as fantasy goes. Currently, they give up the 23rd most points allowed to the position, so they're a pretty tough matchup. However, they currently give up the most yards per attempt to running backs, and they are a defense that you can run on. I mean, we saw last week Brian Robinson averaging somewhere around 7 yards per attempt, something ridiculous like that. And they just weren't able to establish the run. So Raheem Mostert, what we're focusing on is that this should be an explosive matchup. We want bodies in this game in our lineups, right? Give me Waddle, give me Tyreek, give me Diggs, give me Allen, give me Tua, give me Raheem. We'll talk about Devon Achane here in a bit, but you got to start Raheem Mostert, RB1 on the year. I don't think that's going to last per se, but again, you need to start him until he proves us differently. And the last one that I'm excited to start, and I already know I'm probably going to get hate for even saying this, but I'm excited to start Josh Jacobs this week. I know. It's been ugly. It's been awful. 2 weeks ago, he averaged negative yards per attempt, right? I get it. I totally get it. It's been awful, but the volume is there. He's still top 5 in running back usage rate, and they're going to continue to pound the ball with Josh Jacobs. Eventually, I believe, remember, he wasn't with this team throughout all of the preseason, all of training camp. Once he gets into his zone, I think he's going to be unleashed. And he goes up against the Chargers. This should be a high-scoring matchup. The Chargers give up the 12th most points to fantasy running backs. I like the matchup. We are starting Josh Jacobs, and hopefully, finally, the volume pays off for JJ. All right, let's move into the must-start categories. These are running backs that you just have to start. Good running backs on good offenses, okay? First one, Derrick Henry. I'm just laughing because I said on good offenses. Derrick Henry is not on a good offense. However, historically, he has been a good running back. Now, I will say, Derrick Henry has been my biggest sell this offseason, and even week 1, I made a video encouraging you guys to sell him because of the usage of Tajay Spears, and I am concerned. I'm absolutely concerned. But this is a matchup or a player rather that has to be in your lineup. I know it's tough, but right now you just can't sit Derrick Henry unless you have clear better options ahead of him. So we're starting Derrick Henry. Hopefully he gets more than 11 rushing attempts, and hopefully he averages more than less than 2 yards per attempt or whatever it was that he was averaging. The next player that we're starting is in the same matchup, a must start, Joe Mixon. This is a guy that I was encouraging you to trade for when we were selling away Derrick Henry. Joe Mixon got on the in the end zone last week, and he is similar to Josh Jacobs, the dominant running back in this backfield, getting all the work, getting all the usage, all the goal line, short yardage scenarios. He is getting that work, so you start him with confidence. After that, we have my RB14 on the week, James Cook. Remember, we talked about it. We want bodies in this matchup. Raheem Mostert, James Cook, Tua, Josh Allen. We want this to be an explosive game. It's the highest over-under of the week for good reason, and we are starting James Cook. Miami currently gives up the 9th most points to fantasy running backs. James Cook is probably not going to be someone that gets goal line touches. We know that goes to Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. However, he is everywhere in between the 20s on the field, including through the air. He's getting a lot of work through the air, which we like to see. All right, the next guy we will talk about here is Zach Moss. Yes, Zach Moss is a must start. And I really struggled with how high I had Zach Moss ranked going into this video because I'm sitting here saying to myself, do I really have this guy ranked inside my top 15? Zach Moss? I have Zach Moss ranked in my top 15. And here's the deal. I just don't know how you sit Zach Moss after he saw 33 touches last week. 33 touches, 30 carries, 3 targets. He had a reception through the air. How do you not play a guy who's touching the ball that much? It's just, you got to put him in your lineup. He faces the Rams, who currently are 18th in points allowed to running backs. So it's not a great matchup. It's not a bad matchup, but the volume is there. And this is a volume play. By the way, I mean, at minimum, we can all agree that the rushing attack for the Colts looks very, very good. All right, that is it for the must starts. Next, we're going into the Be Grateful tier. And why is this called the Be Grateful tier? It's, hey, these might not be the best matchups, but be grateful that you have a running back you can start. You know, in fantasy this year, so many people are struggling on a week-to-week basis with having any startable running backs on their entire roster. And if you have a running back here, just be grateful that you have someone you can start and not think about it. First one we'll talk about is Alvin Kamara coming back from suspension. He faces the Tampa Bay Bucks, which they're a good defensive front. We did see Philly run all over them, but keep in mind, Philly's offensive line is probably the best in football, especially in the run game. But at the moment, the Tampa Bay Bucks, 19th in points allowed, so they're definitely not a plus matchup or anything. But Alvin Kamara should be used in the air and on the ground. Kendre Miller did not solidify himself. Jamal Williams is injured. It should be Alvin Kamara's world over there in New Orleans. Next running back that we have here is Miles Sanders. Get this, guys. Miles Sanders is currently on pace to have 113 targets this year. Ridiculous type usage. Almost 7 targets per game is what he's averaging. And he's been doing it with Bryce Young and with Andy Dalton. So regardless of who plays, we think it's Bryce Young. Zach Moss is a must start. Miles Sanders is a must start, not only because of what he gets on the ground, but also through the air. But this matchup is also one that we find relatively intriguing versus the Minnesota Vikings, who are 22nd in points allowed. So at the moment, their defensive front has been much better than it was last year. But this is a defense that is giving up the second most yards per game to opponents. We want, some sort of offensive pieces in that matchup. So start Miles Sanders. I mean, no one in the NFL at the running back position has more targets so far. All right, next we will talk about Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson, he has a very, very tough matchup. My RB20 on the week. Very difficult matchup. There's no way around that. At Dallas. It's not even home. It's at Dallas. This defensive front looks insane between the Niners and the Cowboys and maybe the Eagles. I mean, there's a lot of good defenses out there, but this is like easily top 3 worst matchup for your running back. And Stevenson's efficiency has gone down this year. It's just gone down. I know that the usage isn't in the way that it was last year through the air, but even his efficiency has gone down. Regardless, be grateful you have a startable running back. Okay, next we are going to talk about DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift versus the Washington Commanders, who are currently 16th in points allowed to running backs, so they're kind of middle of the pack at this point. I think Swift could actually be deserving of a higher ranking here. Like if I had to actually choose between Ramondre and Swift, now that I'm really thinking this over, I do think Swift is probably the better play. The issue is Kenneth Gainwell isn't going away. He's just not going away. And DeAndre Swift, yes, he looks better, but this is the issue with people thinking with their fantasy mind. Teams aren't going to use one running back for the most part. Like 90% of the league is not using one running back. They have split backfield. Certain players play certain roles. So Swift is going to be great. He's going to be efficient. We just don't know. Is he going to get 20 touches? Maybe, maybe not. But in this matchup versus the Washington Commanders, he's absolutely someone that you should start and be grateful that you have him on your team. And the last person we'll talk about here is James Conner. James Conner played the Dallas Cowboys last week and went completely ham, like a touchdown, over 100 yards, and he wasn't inefficient either. He was pretty efficient. So I'm not going to say he's matchup proof, but if he did that versus the Cowboys, which had been the most difficult matchup for running backs, then it's hard to really say to not start him this week, even if he is going up against a good defense in the San Francisco 49ers. So we are starting James Conner. All right. The next tier is called Close Your Eyes. These are running backs that either don't have the volume we want or are in matchups that are really tough, and they might not be the most talented guys, but we're closing our eyes and we're just putting them out there because they're probably our best options. That's how I'm viewing it, honestly. So the first guy in that category is Alexander Mattison. One of my starts of the week last week. It paid off for you. We'll see what Cam Akers' role is. The front office is telling us that Madison's their guy, and we just have to believe them until they prove us otherwise. But the matchup is incredible for Madison. We really like this matchup at the Carolina Panthers. They give up the third most points to fantasy running backs. You can fire up Alexander Mattison. Just don't watch the game because, again, close your eyes. There might be a fumble or two, but close your eyes. He's going to get volume in a good matchup. How about Javonte Williams? We will play Javonte Williams this week if he's our best option. It's a great matchup at the Chicago Bears. Javonte Williams at the Chicago Bears should get back on track. This should be his first game well over 10 PPR points. Someone has to win this matchup, and I think Javonte finally has a game. Next, we will talk about Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford in another matchup that is, I would say, less than ideal, right? Jerome Ford versus the Baltimore Ravens. They've been a pretty good defense this year, 17th in points allowed. You just have to hope that the role stays the same from what we saw last week with Kareem Hunt. You have to hope that he remains the spell back. I think he is the spell back, and that Jerome Ford is given the starter treatment. Now, keep in mind that they were facing a very difficult defense last week with the Tennessee Titans, so maybe they run the ball a little bit more efficiently in this matchup versus the Ravens. All right, this is where we will talk about Devon Achane. It's not Achane anymore, it's Achane. Devon Achane is my running back 26 on the week at the Buffalo Bills. We talked about the matchup with Raheem Mostert. At the end of the day, I want bodies in this matchup. Mostert, James Cook, Devon Achane. Now, there is a possibility Achane, goes out there and he touches the ball 6 times. And you're like, why the hell did I start him? But let me ask you right now, without knowing what will happen this weekend, how do you sit a guy who just put up 50 PPR points, right? I mean, this is one of those guys that you probably are starting unless you have clear, better options. Next, we will talk about Dameon Pierce. How are the Dameon Pierce truthers feeling? I know I got clowned a lot for how low I had him ranked this offseason. It's just not looked good for Dameon Pierce, let's be honest. And this offense is not built around the run game. They are letting CJ Stroud throw the ball all over the yard. Now, it's a good matchup, okay? It is a good matchup. He's versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are currently 4th in points allowed to running backs. So if there's any week for him to bounce back, it's this week. Let's hope that that is the case. Next, we will talk about Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson was actually pretty efficient last week against the Bills. He just didn't have much opportunity. And that's what concerns me about this week. Why did Brian Robinson not have opportunity last week? Because the Commanders were being blown out and they just decided to abandon the run game. Well, this week, the Commanders face the Philadelphia Eagles, who currently are the worst matchup for running backs. I hate to say it, but as a Commanders fan, I easily see a scenario where the Eagles are dominating this game, which means that the Commanders will have to abandon the run. I hate it, but that's why he's ranked a little bit lower for me this week. And the last 2 guys we'll talk about here, Rachaad White and Matt Breida. I know that's crazy. Give me a second to explain. Rachaad White is at the Saints, who are a tough matchup. They're a bottom 7 matchup. He is a volume play. And then Matt Breida versus the Seattle Seahawks, who are 10th in points allowed. Let me tell you guys this. If Saquon Barkley does not play, we are easily moving Matt Breida above everyone in this tier. I know it sounds crazy, okay? But if you look at the usage last week, Matt Breida had all the goal line work, all the first and second down work. He was used in the air. Matt Breida had 82% of the snaps. They have clearly told us that if Saquon's not there, Breida will get volume. And in a plus matchup with volume, we'll go Matt Breida's way. But if Saquon does play, we can move him all the way to must sit, okay? So there's a wide range of outcomes here. That's why I didn't know where to rank him just yet. All right, the next tier, we call it Despacito, or at least I call it Despacito. Despacito. If you know, you know. I'm sorry for singing. But Despacito is there because these are desperation plays. You're in a tough spot. You're in a situation where you have injuries and you picked guys off the waiver, or this is just your best option, or guys are underperforming. You're desperate, but they're your best option. there's got to be better options than these guys, except for the people who are absolutely desperate. So we'll go ahead and name them off. Breece Hall, Najee Harris, Isaiah Pacheco, Jaylen Warren, Rashawn Johnson, Khalil Herbert, Kenneth Gainwell, Gus Edwards, Tyler Algier, and Jerick McKinnon. I would consider all of these guys desperation plays. Let's go through it real quick. Breece Hall, not a good matchup versus the Kansas City Chiefs, 29th in points allowed. Bad matchup on a bad offense. This offense is last in yards per game. They are last in passing yards per game. They're last in first downs. They're second to last in red zone attempts per game. It's a bad offense. And unfortunately, because Zach Wilson has been so poor, all the defense has to do is zone in on these two running backs, and they win the game. So right now, Breece Hall's not a very good play until we get good quarterback play that can even the offense out. Najee Harris. Najee Harris has a great matchup, but he has been so bad. Now, I want to put the blame more on the offensive line because analytics will show you that it's more offensive line issue than it is Najee Harris. He's been playing okay given the offensive line play, but I just don't know how it gets much better. It's a great matchup, but I still have to make him a desperation play. As for the Kansas City running backs, Jerick McKinnon had 5 touches last week, and he scored 17 PPR points. Not something that's reliable. He's very boom bust. He's more of a best ball play than a redraft play. As for Pacheco, he's a fine play, but Kansas City never really funnels their offense, through the running backs. So can you really ever feel that confident starting Pacheco? He was a start of the week for me last week, but just a little more concerned this week versus a better defense in the New York Jets. Then we have Jaylen Warren. Same thing with Najee Harris. It's a good matchup, but how do you trust these Steelers running backs? For the Bears running backs, they have an incredible matchup against the Denver Broncos, who just gave up over 95 points to Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert combined. However, they're on maybe the second worst offense after the Jets. All the guys in here, just desperation plays, just Hail Mary, throw it up and see what happens. I just don't see a scenario in which these guys are not desperation plays, if we're being honest. And then we will move into the must-sit category. We have A.J. Dillon here. I just realized I haven't put my Thursday night rankings in here. I'll show you guys. They're locked. I'm not going to move them because Monty had a good game. I'll show you exactly where I had them ranked. But A.J. Dillon was a must-sit for me. Same with Elijah Mitchell. He's not involved without Christian McCaffrey having an injury. We're not starting Kareem Hunt. You have to sit him until he either grows a larger role or looks better. We're not starting Samaje Perine, even though it's a good matchup. With Jaleel McLaughlin being used as well, it's too messy. We're not starting Kendre Miller. It's a good defense, and Alvin Kamara is back. We're not starting Tajay Spears either, although in like 3 to 5 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if that changes. Same for Zach Charbonnet, who we just can't start just yet. Kim Walker's getting too much work. And then you can't start Zeke, and you can't start Dalvin Cook unquestionably. So those are all must-sits for me. If you don't see a player on this list, they probably end up in the must-sit category. Now, I will quickly tell you, because I want to be fair, okay? I want to be fair. As someone who does weekly rankings, you'll never be able to get 100% success. You'll hit some, you'll miss some. That's just the reality, okay? There's not a single person in this world who can be 100% with their rankings. So I'm going to show you exactly how I had the Lions and the Packers running backs ranked before Thursday night, so you can hold me accountable, okay? Because sometimes I hit and sometimes I miss. Aaron Jones, I was super excited to start Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was a prime start for me, okay? He was someone that I had ranked. Let me see. Aaron Jones was my RB9 this week. Didn't work out. Did not work out whatsoever. They didn't use him the way that I thought they would. I completely whiffed on the usage he would see. The offense was down, meaning they weren't able to run the ball. It just didn't work out, okay? And that's on me. However, David Montgomery is someone that I feel like I definitely hit on. He was a must start for me right after Zach Moss. So we feel pretty good about that. Did I expect him to get 30 points? Of course not. But I'm glad we told you guys to start him in our rankings, as well as Jahmyr Gibbs. We put him in the Be Grateful category. So, you know, Jahmyr Gibbs probably doesn't finish where I have him ranked. I have him ranked as an RB19. He probably doesn't finish there. But he got 13 touches, okay? And they were in a game script that was positive. I feel good about the process of telling people to start Jahmyr Gibbs this week. So, anyway, that is my top 50. And then, of course, we had A.J. Dillon as a must-sit. You guys know that. But that's my top 50. Hopefully, it's helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you want access to all position rankings that I do every week, over 340 players ranked, check out the description where you can find a direct link to sign up to the Flock Fantasy website. Make sure you use our promo code LAND, and you'll get 30% off your membership. Outside of that, enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you soon. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.